had a 13-story residential apartment building in Gaza targeted by the Israeli Air Force destroyed. How is that not anything other than a war crime, a deliberate attack on a civilian target?
Hamas had warned of a major strike on Tel Aviv if Israel targeted residential buildings in Gaza. A little after sunset, after telling the families who lived here to get out, Israel's military did just that. The Israeli Prime Minister had warned of a gathering intensity and pace of attack. The army said the building was in part used by Hamas.
You know, I think it's actually very disfortunate that people are trying to equate the IDF response to Hamas as a terrorist organization. Israel acts in accordance with the international law. We target only Hamas targets, and every target that we're firing at is being chosen very carefully.
Hussein Hamad was one of several Palestinian children killed in Israeli airstrikes on Monday.
وليش قتلوا يعني؟ ما هم بقتلوا فيش حساب لهم، ما هم بقتلوا فيش حساب، العالم كله بيتفرج، ولو قتل طفل، لو قتل مرة، لو قتل إيش ما جاء، فيش واحد يحاسبهم هذول الناس، فعشان هيك هو متاح له، يعني لو قتل طفل ولا حاجة.
We don't have time to get into an argument about international law. Suffice to say that most human rights groups criticize Israel for violating human rights law, and they criticize Hamas. But you leveled an apartment building. I think you gave them a 1-hour warning to get out of the building. You think that's in line with humanitarian law to bomb a civilian apartment building in Gaza?
You know, Hamas is using the Palestinians in Gaza as human shields. They're firing rockets at Israel from within centers of civilian population because they want to see these sites. They want to force Israel to respond.
Hamas purposefully makes their civilians the shields to their offensive points. That's not hyperbole. Think about that, what they do to their population. I don't want to just speak about this in platitudes.
But police tactics are under scrutiny after this video was shared on social media of officers storming a family home in the northern city of Haifa. They can be seen beating an unarmed Palestinian-Israeli man. And to the south of Tel Aviv, the city of Lod has been put under a state of emergency, the first in an Arab community since 1966.
You were mentioning earlier in your show about the casualties and the children that were killed, and you said that it was results of IDF strikes, but we know for a fact that 6 of these children, for example, were killed because of Hamas rockets were misfired and fell in within the Gaza Strip, and they killed the Palestinians. So I'm taking any report
just to be clear, I just want to be clear here, Elad. I just want us to be clear. Let's find common ground. Are we now saying, is your position, because I'm sure militant groups are listening in from across the world, is your position that apartment buildings are fair game if there's someone inside you don't like? Is that the position of the Israeli government tonight?
You know, you say that you don't want to go into international law, but the question that you're asking is exactly a question of international law. It's a question of what is a legitimate target.
It's a simple question. Are apartment buildings okay to bomb? Because I'm sure Hamas will say that.
A military target, then it's a legitimate strike. If Hamas is using the target in order to hide weapons, in order to use it as a commanding post, then it's a legitimate strike. But you said you don't want to go there, so
okay. I mean,
no one can look at this and see anything other than a tragedy that has happened here. But the images that are coming out of Gaza are truly horrific. It seems that what Israel is doing in Gaza is totally disproportionate to what is happening here.
I would beg to differ. I think that what we are doing are specific strikes against military targets inside Gaza that are part of the Hamas and the Islamic Jihad's military infrastructure.
We watched the Iron Dome intercept some of them as they flew north.
Let's go in. Let's go in. Come on, Mohammed.
Hamas claims to be the defender of the Palestinian cause, striking their occupier. Israel will strike back harder still, and the diplomacy to break this cycle isn't there.
But how did this current attack start and why?
Well, you've got a number of separate issues. You've got the Israelis who are trying to expand into East Jerusalem, which the Palestinians say belongs to them. You've also got political unrest within Israel itself. They can't agree on who ought to be prime minister. They're having a series of general elections, all of which are inconclusive. And then you've also got political tensions within the Palestinian community itself, between Hamas, which is doing the attacking from Gaza, and the Palestine Liberation Organization. nation. So both sides have got their own internal politics as well as external politics, and then you've got the outside countries like Iran, etc., who also want to buy into the controversy.
This morning, Israeli tanks were filmed heading towards the border with Gaza. Israel says it's too early to say whether there'll be a ground offensive, but it's preparing for all contingencies.
So what the media have failed to report is that this tension, this violence, is the result of an incitement which has been going on for weeks. At the beginning of Ramadan, there was the beginning of incitement by the Palestinian Authority, by Hamas, calling Palestinian Arabs to holy war, as a result of which there were attacks on Jews in Jerusalem, in the streets, requiring hospitalization, attacks in the streets, attacks on the light railway. There were attempts to arrest them. There were then violent disturbances by the Arabs. And what then happened, as Ramadan proceeded, was that the Al-Aqsa Mosque, the supposedly holy place for Muslims, was turned into a theatre of war.
Chaos and confrontation inside the Al-Aqsa Mosque compound as Israeli police fire stun grenades to disperse Muslim worshippers.
At around 7, all of a sudden, a huge force of police attacked Muslim worshippers who were inside the mosque.
The police also fired tear gas and rubber bullets at Palestinian protesters. They say they responded after stones, bottles and fireworks were thrown at them. Al-Quds Day, also known as Jerusalem Day, falls on the last Friday of the fasting month of Ramadan. The annual event is a protest against Israel's rule of Jerusalem.
And as I think you may yourself have referred to, this extraordinary piece broadcast by the senior Hamas operative, saying explicitly, cut the throats of the Jews, and this is a holy war against what he called Jews and polytheists, which I believe is a kind of euphemism for Christians. So that's what we're in here. We're in an Islamic holy war incited by Mahmoud Abbas and the Hamas, and being sanitized, misrepresented quite wickedly by the Western media.
What you're doing is taking the law into your own hands, but I'm afraid we are out of time. Thank you very much for explaining your perspective. We'll leave it to the viewers to draw their conclusions.
This is the same thing that Jesus was talking about in Luke 21 when he said, when you see Jerusalem being surrounded by armies, and you will know that its desolation is near. There will be wrath, he said, against this people, and they will be taken as prisoners to all the nations. Well, we know that happened in the year 70 AD. He says, in Jerusalem will be trampled on by Gentiles until the time of the Gentiles are fulfilled. So for the next 1,897 years, Jerusalem was under the control. It was literally trampled under by Gentiles or non-Jews. Until something completely unexpected happened in June 7, 1967, when we find the prognosis was that Israel was going to be wiped out by the Arab nations. Instead, the opposite happened, and they recaptured the city of Jerusalem. They didn't take it away from the Palestinians. A Palestinian is a make-believe name for a group of people that never existed, never had a national identity. Palestine was a region and not a nation. It was Jordan, the country of Jordan, that controlled that entire area, including the city of Jerusalem.
Rockets from Gaza again fell on southern Israeli cities tonight, and the Israelis retaliated once more. And behind all this, a land so divided for so long feels right now extremely tense.